Good evening, this is the Oscar expert here with Brother Bro, and it's time to review Top Gun Maverick. This is the sequel to Top Gun, directed by Joseph Kosinski. Massive hit. Everyone's raving about it. We're late to the game in reviewing it, but I have to agree with everybody else that this is a much better film than the original, and it's just an immensely satisfying blockbuster.
It's not that it's not a Top Gun movie, it's not that it's trying to be something more than it is. It's just that it's doing what it's supposed to do extremely well, and that it's just an exhilarating piece of action filmmaking.
But I would also say that it goes above and beyond what the first one did in terms of getting your heart engaged with the story. The real roar of the jet is the one that goes on in your heart. I also think stylistically this movie's pretty special in terms of how it balances being a sort of modern feeling blockbuster with being an older classic feeling blockbuster like the original Top Gun. This movie feels like it's tailor-made for the they don't make them like they used to crowd. And tonally, it's not afraid to be kind of a cheesy 80s movie. I mean, when you watch the original Top Gun, that's kind of what's charming about it. Like, this one's not afraid to have the guys playing on the beach scene all oiled up, those flirty looks between Tom Cruise and Jennifer Connelly, and of course Tom Cruise being a loose cannon and then being like, "You've disobeyed orders, son, but goddamn you can fly that plane." Even some of the lines of dialogue, they're kind of silly or on the nose. It's what my dad would have done. But I like that it owns it.
I can identify the lines that are really kind of cheesy, that normally I would find funny, but I actually agree that the movie earns those lines because it actually does put thought into those parts of the story. I think the script cares just enough about the characters, where even if the moments do seem like a little bit cheesy or hammy, you buy into it anyway. With the characters, it does a really good job at communicating what is missing in their lives and what that hole is that they're trying to fill. And then watching them fill that void and then having that, be intertwined in the actual physical plot is just moving. That's just how you move the audience in a story.
Yeah, I think this movie captures this feeling that I had while watching the original. Even as I watched it on my laptop in my bed, I was like, I feel like I'm a senior year high school student with a jock jacket on, watching this in a drive-through theater.
I don't know how to say this in an apolitical way, but I don't mean it politically, but it has really intense MAGA energy. It has this idea of how things used to be, even down to this sentiment that the planes used to not fly themselves and now they just fly themselves. And Tom Cruise is aging out of that. He's one of the last people who's really into these sorts of missions. There's a super intense, heterosexual romance at the center of this. I don't know how to describe it. It's real hetero energy. Masculinity does suffice in providing the men with these loving and caring relationships in this world. And I do think that's a genuine thing. I'm not saying that doesn't exist, but it's not something that you see embraced often in I guess the culture now is a little bit more critical of gender roles. And I'm all for it, but this movie just really dives back into that, I guess, the way that things used to be, and it sort of romanticizes that. And then also the way it portrays the military as being very heroic, made of individuals who through their own courage are able to, grow in themselves, and they may be fighting a bad guy, but they do a good job at making who the bad guy is completely ambiguous. It has this bubble, and it likes being in it, and it'll make you like being in it also.
But it's also something that I think people are finding refreshing right now,
I guess. I mean, audiences I definitely understand would find it refreshing. It's exhausting to have to reflect on your own culture and your own place in the world. It's very exhausting. I understand why a blockbuster can go and take you away from that.
Even me who likes movies that try to subvert those standards, I still kind of found it refreshing, this movie, in ways that I wasn't expecting. It just has a charm and a quality.
Yeah, it's just escapism.
But it's also not escapism in the Marvel way.
I don't know what you mean by that.
I don't exactly know what I mean by that either, but I mean it. But this is also a really technically well-made movie too. Cinematographer of Life of Pi, one of the opening scenes where Tom Cruise is up there in the night sky, that scene looks beautiful. You got a lot of those Tony Scott-esque close-ups from the original that also look really nice.
And obviously, we all know that putting the camera on the planes and the way they physically filmed those scenes is incredible. And as a piece of action filmmaking, it is very well put together and exhilarating, especially the third act. I actually didn't quite feel that way in the first two acts because they are in the air, but it's more just the training, and I didn't find it quite as exciting. But by the third act, especially because of the way they set up the story and how exactly what the pilots are supposed to be doing at every moment. It lets you forget about the story and then just be completely like thrilled or scared, just like these pilots are. And it really does feel like a, special cinematic experience in that last third act. And they did a great job building the stakes and just giving you more and more until you really feel like you've had a very full meal. And then you get off that plane and everybody's happy and smiling, and then the credits roll up, and it's just like, that was everything that it needed to be. You enjoyed yourself, you forgot about all your problems, and you can tell that the audience that you're sitting with freaking loved that thing, because that's what they want to see in a movie. And it really felt like a movie that loves its audience and respects the audience. It seems like they went through a lot of effort to tell this story and to do it justice, to not leave any loose threads, and to give you an exhilarating action experience. It did kind of feel like I was being, tucked in, or someone was just feeding me like a meatball that they like home cooked, and they like know it's really good. They're like, "Aren't you enjoying my meatball that I made for you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, this is good." Through and through, it's a film that was made with love for the audience, and that is why everybody is happy about this movie. That is why it is making money, and it deserves all those things.
I also really like that they used music in a similar way that the original did. They incorporated a lot of the same songs from the original just for the hell of it, but then Hans Zimmer threw in some of the melodies from the songs into his score. And they also did the same thing with the original Lady Gaga track, which is kind of overdone and kitschy and has its own kind of charm. I mean, I know the score is also technically done by Lady Gaga and another fellow. The score really brings out the sentimental side of the movie with those strings. It's a great sounding movie too, of course. We all know, I mean, this is maybe even a front runner for the Oscar for Best Sound. Some moments that stood out to me were like the near miss flybys when the jet would go like right by them, or moments where the soundscape would soften up when there's something more emotional going on inside the planes.
I just thought the quality of the sound sitting in, I think we were in a Dolby theater, like the planes just sounded so real and intense. The sounds were just very three-dimensional and rich. I don't really know how to like dissect or describe sound work. The planes were very loud and the sound made me excited. The way that the planes made noise was exciting.
I actually would defend the movie on having a little bit of depth. I think it resolves the loss that took place in the first film and Tom Cruise's conflict with that in a way that is so satisfying and perfect that you'd think that the original set up this one long ago. And I think it sort of has this message about when you open yourself up to love, that you have to open yourself up to risk and the possibilities of loss. I think that is something that is in this movie. And I would say that it dove a little deeper than I expected.
And Tom Cruise, he is just so effortlessly charming, but also able to move through like any level of depth in emotion. Just completely effortless. He's just absolutely perfect. It feels like the movie and Tom Cruise are just intertwined.
I think Miles Teller and Jennifer Connelly's characters have a really solid place in the story. Although their performances individually didn't like do that much for me, Tom Cruise stood out more to me.
Shockingly, I loved this one shot where she like hugs him, and the lighting in it is just unnecessarily beautiful. I don't know what it was about this one shot. It was kind of unnecessary, but it's like that's really nice. Everything about this shot is just very warm.
Well, let's get into Oscars here, because this movie's got that buzz. Sound, we said it could win.
I would have Top Gun at #1 for sound.
Lady Gaga's song, sure. Just do it. Just nominate it.
They did a good job also at not playing it during the credits, but at playing it during a scene where there could have been credits.
They played it
weren't
before the credits and into the credits. So I think they barely get credit for that.
I don't know. I felt like it was playing and I was still watching the movie, and I was like, you're letting me listen to the song and I'm not like trying to leave.
I think this will be nominated for editing. I think that if it's going to win sound, it's going to get editing. I mean, maybe even if it doesn't get Best Picture like The Force Awakens or something, I think maybe it just happens. I kind of think maybe it just happens.
I mean, we didn't even talk about the editing, but the editing was mwah. It was excellent, especially in the third act. Keeping you aware of what's happening between these different planes, building the intensity. Like, it's definitely a very easy achievement in editing to recognize. And so I don't think it will be forgotten.
And these are all the nominations that the original got: sound, editing, and song. But this movie could go further. Visual effects, I'm not sure like how much was done outside of probably like a few explosions.
There were definitely like a good amount of visual effects. And the thing is, the Oscars go out of their way when they like a movie to recognize if it's doing visual effects in, you know, maybe even an unconventional way. Like 1917 winning visual effects, that's the kind of thing that makes me think they could go for a Top Gun Maverick.
Yeah, they're a little iffy when it comes to these movies where they have some visual effects. Like they will nominate, you know, 1917, Ex Machina 1, but then there's like, you know, Shape of Water, Dunkirk, Arrival, all not nominated. So you never know where they're going to go. I think it's like an outside shot for cinematography, but my hunch is that it'll be like this year's No Time to Die or Ford v Ferrari, where it gets kind of close, maybe gets an ASC nomination, but doesn't actually get the nomination at the end of the day.
We're going to get some heavy hitters in cinematography, like for sure. I don't think this is as likely as the other categories we just mentioned.
I also think score could be in the conversation. Maybe sort of like cinematography. I don't actually expect that it'll be in the 5 at the moment, but could have some buzz. Wouldn't be entirely undeserved. Yeah. And also, you know, finally, like Best Picture. And I don't think it's stupid to talk about it when it comes to this movie. I mean, This is the lowest second weekend drop of any movie that's ever made more than 100 million. It is one of the highest grossing movies post-pandemic, and it's going to make $1 billion. The IMDb score is like an 8.7. Ridiculous. Critics love it. Everyone loves it.
And consider that it could very well get editing and sound. Then you got the 10 slots. People are going to be like, oh, why can't you make room? You know, we all know there's going to be like some Bill Maher segment where he's like, what is this movie? I've never heard of it. This movie I've never heard of. What is women talking? The only movie I saw this year, I don't know about you guys, but it was Top Gun Maverick. And that was a kick-ass movie. I don't know what's going on with the Oscars these days. It's not that like that conversation necessarily has any bearing on the Oscars or not. Or does it? I don't know. Or does it?
I don't think so. I mean, people screamed about No Way Home last year. It didn't work.
And I think it's different than Spider-Man. Because Spider-Man No Way Home, I don't think it was not a technical achievement whatsoever. Top Gun Maverick is like Oscar worthy in a technical way.
It has prestige.
Yeah, it has some prestige. Although in other ways, it is a little bit silly and it's kind of like a parody of itself. So there are some things about it where it doesn't feel like an Oscar film or one that's begging to be taken seriously. So it is in this kind of interesting no man's land, I think, right now.
When movies win Best Sound, they tend to be nominated for Best Picture. The last Best Sound winner not nominated in Best Picture was Skyfall, and that was a tie, and then like The Bourne Ultimatum. I'm not convinced that it gets Best Picture because the thing is, when it comes to the end of the year, you know, is the high that this movie's on like a lasting one? Is this a Mad Max situation where people are like, oh, we have to appreciate it?
Mad Max was like the critics' favorite movie of the year. Top Gun Maverick is not going to be the critics' favorite movie of the year.
Yeah, I mean, I think
it's going to be fans' favorite movie of the year, but we don't know where. I mean, that doesn't really get a movie into Best Picture alone.
Right. I think it maybe lacks like the potential for a director nomination, if that even makes sense. You know what I mean, though? Like,
yeah, because Ford v Ferrari, by comparison, that was kind of poised as a prestige film. Like, it came out at the festivals. It was on people's radar for,
and it wasn't a sequel.
Actors and the director, who have all been in the Oscar conversation before. Like, there's the distinction there between Ford v Ferrari and Top Gun Maverick, whereas this is a balls out blockbuster, and it's called Top Gun Maverick. It is Top Gun Maverick. Yeah. Like, it's weird.
You know, it lives and dies at PGA.
Yeah, but I think it does live at PGA. I think it will get a PGA nomination. I could easily see that.
Well, you know, people said that No Way Home would, and it didn't. People said No Time to Die would, and it didn't. So we'll have predictions soon. You'll see where it ranks. I think it'll be outside the top 10, but I'm not willing to discount it completely. I am willing to discount Tom Cruise in Best Actor. That's like kind of a weird thing that some people have proposed. I don't think that's going to happen. I get that there's a sort of wanting to honor him to some degree. Maybe you can't underestimate a high IMDb score will be the lesson that we learned at the end of the year. I feel like this movie deserves a 9. In terms of how much I like it, I'm just going to give it like a very good 8.
Yeah, I'm pretty much with you there. This movie made me care more than I thought I would. And that's like, that's huge. That's amazing. I do not have many bad things at all to say about this film, but it is a very, very strong 8 for me.
Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing.
Do you wish people called you Maverick?